I was standing in the middle of the Riverside High School gymnasium, holding a glass of sparkling water I hadn't touched yet, when I heard his voice cut through the noise of 200 people, catching up on 15 years of life. That voice, I would have recognized it in a burning building, in a crowded airport, in a nightmare. It hadn't changed at all. Still carrying that particular brand of confidence that sits right on the edge of arrogance. The kind of voice that expects rooms to go quiet when it speaks. Olivia? Olivia Chen? I turned around, and there he was, Brandon Whitfield, except he wasn't the Brandon I remembered, the lanky 20-year-old who used to steal fries off my plate and tell me I was too sensitive every time I cried at movies. This Brandon was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first car. Perfectly styled hair, the kind of tan that comes not from yard work but from campaign events held on golf courses, and pinned to his lapel a small American flag, because of course there was. He was a state senator now. I'd seen his face on highway billboards driving here. Brandon Whitfield, a new voice for Ohio's future. Smiling that same smile he used to give me when he wanted something. He looked me up and down, not subtly, not the way a decent person tries to be discreet about it, just openly, like he was assessing real estate and wasn't sure it had held its value. I watched the calculation happen behind his eyes, and then he smiled wider and said the thing that would change the entire rest of that evening. So, he tilted his head. That smirk I once thought was charming. Never found your prince on a white horse, huh? The people near us heard it. Jennifer Kowalski, who I hadn't seen since graduation. Some guy whose name tag read Todd. Jennifer's eyes went a little wide. Todd looked at his drink, and Brandon just stood there, comfortable in his cruelty, waiting for me to shrink the way I always used to shrink. But here's the thing about the 15 years between us. A lot had happened. A lot that Brandon Whitfield knew absolutely nothing about. Before I could say a single word, I heard the sound that rewires my entire nervous system, the way it always does, the way it always will. Small sneakers squeaking on a gymnasium floor. "Mom! Daddy's here! I told him where to find you!" My son Lucas came sprinting across the gym, dodging between legs, face lit up like Christmas morning, clip-on tie already crooked. He crashed into my side and grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the entrance, where the double doors were swinging open and letting in the October air. I looked at Brandon Whitfield's face in that exact moment. I watched the color leave it. I watched the smirk dissolve into something I had never, not once, seen there before. Something that looked a lot like fear. Because standing in that doorway, filling it the way he tends to fill a room, not with noise or aggression, but with the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself, was my husband. And Brandon Whitfield recognized him immediately. Anyone in Ohio would have. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand what happened when those gym doors swung open, you need to understand what it took to get there. 15 years ago, I was the girl who loved Brandon Whitfield so much it scared me. 18 years old, just accepted to Ohio State on a partial scholarship for biochemistry. My dad took us to Applebee's when the letter came and ordered the steak, which he never did. That's how big it felt. Brandon and I had been together since junior year. Golden boy of the whole town. Starting quarterback, student council president. The one all the adults liked because he could turn on a charm they found very convincing. My best friend Ashley used to say, Brandon collected people the way some kids collect baseball cards. Not because he cared about them, because having them felt good. I didn't listen to Ashley. We did long distance for exactly 1 semester. He pledged a fraternity. His social calendar filled up in ways that didn't include me. The calls got shorter, the texts got slower. By December, he was telling me I was too clingy and needed to give him space to grow. I remember sitting on the floor of my dorm room, back against the bed, phone in my lap, thinking, what do I need to fix about myself to make this work? Months. I spent months on that question, asking the wrong question entirely. The actual breakup happened over text, 3 lines, sent at 11:47 on a Tuesday night during finals week. I found out through Jennifer Kowalski that he'd been seeing someone for 6 weeks before sending me those 3 sentences. I cried for what felt like the appropriate amount of time, and then I did something that turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life. I threw myself into biochemistry. I stopped making myself smaller to fit around someone else's ambitions. I started taking up space. Junior year, I met a professor named Dr. Karen Webb, who told me I had one of the most methodical minds she'd encountered in 20 years of teaching. She pushed me toward graduate school. I almost talked myself out of it, with the same voice that used to say I was too sensitive, too clingy, too much. But I applied. I got in. Full fellowship. By 26, I had a PhD in biochemistry, a publication in the Journal of Biological Chemistry, and a job offer from a research firm in Columbus that paid me $94,000 a year to start. My dad took us to a real steakhouse that time. And then, at a conference in Chicago when I was 28, I met Daniel. People always want to reduce him to his resume. That is exactly the wrong way to understand him. The Daniel I fell in love with was a man who argued with me for 2 hours about protein folding over terrible conference center coffee, who laughed so genuinely that I kept saying things just to hear it happen again, who called me 3 days after we exchanged numbers and said, "I know this is maybe too direct, but I haven't stopped thinking about that conversation, and I'd really like to have another one." Too direct. I loved Too Direct. I had spent so much time with a man who never said anything directly in his life. He told me he was falling in love with me on a regular Tuesday evening in my apartment. We were doing the dishes. He handed me a wet pan and said, "I wanted to say it while we were doing something normal, not during some big moment, because I want you to know, it's not about the moment. It's just always true." I almost dropped the pan. We got married 2 years later. Small ceremony, family and close friends, at a vineyard outside Columbus. Ashley was my maid of honor. She cried the entire time and kept whispering, "I told you Brandon was a baseball card." Lucas came 18 months after the wedding. 8 pounds 4 ounces, born on a Thursday in March, with his father's eyes and my stubborn streak already fully operational. Daniel sat next to my hospital bed for 12 hours and talked to me about everything and nothing, and I remember thinking, this is what it was supposed to feel like, not the performance of love, the actual thing. The reunion invitation arrived in September. I almost deleted it. Daniel was the one who saw me hovering over the trash icon. "You should go," he said. "I haven't talked to most of those people since graduation." "Exactly. Which means you get to show up as the person you actually are now." I looked at him. Brandon will probably be there. He was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then, even better. No edge, no performance, just calm, like he already knew something I was still figuring out. I RSVP'd yes that night. What I did not plan was for Lucas to beg to come. He was 4 years old and had developed a powerful conviction he was being left out of something important. He stood in the kitchen in his little khakis and clip-on tie, which he had put on himself, and looked up at me with his father's eyes and said, "I want to see where you went to school, Mom. Please." Daniel was supposed to finish a call and meet us there later. That was the plan. Plans have a way of revising themselves at exactly the right moment. I walked into that gymnasium alone, got my name tag, took my sparkling water. For about 20 minutes it was actually fine, actually kind of nice. People had lived whole lives. The woman who sat behind me in AP English had opened a bakery in Dayton. The guy who once threw a paper airplane at my head in homeroom had become a pediatric nurse and looked genuinely, thoroughly happy about it. And then I heard that voice. I thought 15 years and a PhD and a husband I actually loved and a son who wore clip-on ties by choice had prepared me for anything Brandon Whitfield could throw at me. I was mostly right. I hadn't anticipated the practiced cruelty of his delivery, the way he said it loud enough for the people around us to hear, because he'd always needed an audience for his best material. I stood there for 1/2 of 1 second, not shrinking, just gathering, and opened my mouth. That was the exact moment I heard the sneakers. Daniel walked through those double doors, and the October air came in with him, and he scanned the room the way he always does. Not searching exactly, more like orienting himself, the way someone does when they're completely comfortable wherever they happen to be. He spotted Lucas first, grinned, then his eyes found mine, and the grin stayed exactly the same, warm, easy, real. Hey, he kissed me on the cheek, crouched down to Lucas's level, and straightened the clip-on tie with 2 fingers. Much better, he said seriously. Lucas beamed like he'd been given an award. I turned around. Brandon Whitfield had not moved, but everything else about him had changed. The practiced ease, gone. The campaign posture, gone. He looked like a man who had done arithmetic and arrived at a number he did not want to see. Here's what I hadn't fully processed when I RSVP'd yes. The reason Brandon's face went the color of old drywall wasn't just that Daniel was my husband. It was that Daniel Reeves was the founder and CEO of Meridian Biotech, the Columbus research company that had, 8 months earlier, been the subject of a state Senate ethics investigation that Brandon Whitfield had publicly championed. 3 press conferences, local news, a podcast with 20,000 downloads. Brandon had called Meridian's federal grant applications a pattern of financial misconduct and an embarrassment to Ohio's scientific community. The Ohio Ethics Commission found nothing, not a single irregularity. They cleared Meridian completely in a 22-page report that used the word exemplary twice. Daniel had not said a word publicly about Brandon's role in it. He didn't have to. And now here was Brandon Whitfield, standing in the gymnasium of Riverside High School, having just told the CEO's wife she'd never found her prince on a white horse, while that CEO crouched 6 feet away straightening their 4-year-old's tie. Brandon made the mistake of walking toward us. He extended his hand. Brandon Whitfield, State Senator, District 14. Olivia and I go way back. Daniel looked at the hand for exactly 1 beat, then shook it, briefly. The way you shake the hand of someone you are being professionally courteous to, and nothing more. Daniel Reeves, he said. I know who you are, Senator. The way he said you... Senator. Not aggressive, not sarcastic, just perfectly, precisely level, like a door closing quietly. Brandon laughed, that social laugh that buys time. Small world, I was just catching up with Olivia, congratulating her. On what? Daniel asked, genuinely calm, genuinely curious. The laugh flickered. On, well, everything, I suppose. Looks like life's been good. It has, I said. I heard my own voice, steady and clear. Daniel, Brandon was just asking if I'd ever found my prince on a white horse. The room went very, very quiet. Jennifer hadn't moved an inch. Todd had abandoned all pretense of his drink. Carla Figueroa from AP History had drifted 3 feet closer in the last 90 seconds. Daniel looked at me, then at Brandon. Then he did something I hadn't expected. He smiled. A real one. What did you say back? He asked me. Lucas interrupted before I could. Daddy, Lucas said helpfully from somewhere around hip level. That man said something to Mommy, and Mommy made a face. A sound escaped Jennifer that she quickly converted into a cough. Daniel looked down at Lucas with complete seriousness. What kind of face? Lucas considered this with the gravity of a 4-year-old expert witness. The face she makes when someone says something dumb. A beat of perfect, crystalline silence. Then Carla Figueroa laughed. One sharp, involuntary sound. Jennifer gave up on the coughing entirely. Even Todd made a noise that was clearly a suppressed laugh converted badly into a throat clear. Brandon's jaw tightened. The American flag pin caught the gymnasium light. Well, he said, voice stripped of some of its polish. It was good to see you, Olivia. Glad things worked out. He was already beginning the social retreat, eyes scanning for somewhere else to be. I let him get exactly 2 steps. Brandon. He stopped, turned back. I want to make sure you heard what my son just said. Not because I need you to feel bad, but because I spent about 3 months in my freshman dorm room, asking myself what I needed to fix to make you stay. I paused. It wasn't a real question. I figured that out eventually. Took a PhD, a husband who tells me he loves me on regular Tuesdays doing dishes, and a kid who apparently has excellent instincts. But I figured it out. He said nothing. He had the look of a man who had walked into a room expecting to be the tallest person in it, and discovered the ceiling was lower than he remembered. "Have a good night," I said. "Congratulations on the Senate seat." He left. Not just relocated within the gymnasium, left. Coat check, jacket, gone within 4 minutes. Jennifer tracked it. She confirmed it to me later via text, with timestamp. What happened after was the part nobody tells you about in the movies. No dramatic music. Lucas wanted to know if there was food, because he was hungry, and the tie was itchy. Daniel found a table near the back and got him a pile of mini quiches, which Lucas examined with deep suspicion before deciding they were acceptable. Jennifer and I sat and talked for a real hour, about her divorce and my research, and what it actually feels like to be in your mid-30s and finally know who you are. Carla Figueroa stopped by and said, not quietly, "That was the best thing I have seen at a Riverside High event since the junior prom DJ played the wrong song for the entire first hour." Daniel sat with Lucas and watched me from across the room, with an expression I know well. Not pride, exactly. Something quieter than pride. The look of a person who is exactly where they want to be and knows it. At 9:15, Lucas was asleep in his car seat before we hit the first traffic light, still wearing the clip-on tie. Daniel drove. I sat in the passenger seat. We didn't talk for a few minutes. Just the highway and Lucas's small, even breathing in the back. "The face she makes when someone says something dumb," Daniel said finally, smiling at the road. "He has your timing," I said. "He has your instincts." I looked out the window. The highway billboards were lit up in the dark. Mattresses, car insurance, personal injury lawyers. No state senate campaigns on this stretch. I thought about the girl on the dorm room floor, asking herself what she needed to fix. I carried that for a while, just not the way I thought I would. I carried it the way you carry a scar that healed clean. You can feel where it was. You know what happened there. But it stopped being a wound a long time ago. It just became part of the map of how you got here. Here, specifically, being a car on a dark Ohio highway, next to a man who tells me things on regular Tuesdays, behind a sleeping 4-year-old in a clip-on tie who tells the truth about faces, without knowing how rare that is. 6 months after the reunion, Brandon Whitfield announced he would not be seeking re-election. The press release cited a desire to pursue opportunities in the private sector. I read it at breakfast, set my phone down, and finished my coffee. Didn't think about it again for a very long time. Lucas still asks to wear the clip-on tie everywhere. Grocery runs, dentist appointments, one memorable trip to the DMV. Daniel bought him 2 more, a navy one and a striped one, because, he said, a man should have options. Some things you don't get over, some things you just grow past, the way a tree grows past the fence that was once supposed to contain it. You get big enough that the fence stops mattering. The fence is still there, you're just not inside it anymore. That's the whole story. The boy with the clip-on tie told the truth. The man in the doorway didn't need to say a word, and the girl who once thought she needed fixing walked out of that gymnasium knowing, with the kind of certainty that doesn't require anyone else's confirmation, that she had never been broken at all.